If you ever suffer from sore joints after long hikes, we're going to go through exactly how to prevent it from happening and how to cure it, okay, if it does happen. So I got this question on Instagram the other day, basically asking this question: have you got any recommendations on how to recover from sore knees after a long hike, and are there any supplements as well that can help with recovery or pain relief? So that's what we're going to nail down in this video. First of all, we're going to talk about the knee and why you're actually getting that pain in the first place, and then we're going to go into how we can prevent it, and then how we can cure it if it occurs. Okay, so very, very good question. Thank you very much. I'll send this through to you, Paul. So, first of all, let's have a look at why you might be getting pain in your joints. So, a lot of the time it's your knees, and the reasons, well, there's quite a few reasons this could be happening, but essentially there's going to be some form of damage in that joint, right? So, when there's damage to the joint, okay, whether it's the ligaments, the tendons, whether it's the bone itself, there's going to be some element of inflammation that's created. The body becomes inflamed because it tries to pad out that area to protect it from further damage, but also creates a lot of fluid retention around that area to help the nutrients get to that area to actually recover it in the first place. And then you're going to feel pain, and obviously depending on how bad it is will depend on the amount of pain that your body presents. So it's just a signal literally from your brain to wherever that area is that's inflamed, going, look, this area is suffering, it's very much inflamed, it's damaged, and what we need to do is stop damaging it anymore. So it creates this signal of pain to prevent you from basically walking on it more and making things worse. That's all that's happening when you've got that pain in your knees. Now obviously if it's not very painful, there's not a lot of damage there, and hopefully it won't take too long to recover. But what we want to do is prevent that in the first place, don't we? So in order to explain this in a bit more detail so you understand it, I'm going to use an analogy of a truck driving and delivering a parcel or a package, right? And this is a fragile package. So this is basically our knee, right? And the truck is our body delivering us through the mountains, essentially. Now, if this truck driver was driving down this road without any straps on this package, it's just going to fall off the back, isn't it? Which isn't ideal, right? So we want straps on it so that if the person brakes, it doesn't go flying forwards, and if the person accelerates fast, it's not going to go flying off the back. So of course the driver would ensure he's got his straps to make sure that it's all nailed down, right? So the straps are there to stop it from going forward and backwards. And that's exactly what we've got on our knee. So here we've got our kneecap, right? So we're looking at it from the side angle. But what we've got is these ligaments that go from one bone to the other to prevent it from going forwards and backwards, okay? So you may have heard of the ACL. That's one of these ligaments to prevent it from going forwards or backwards, right? So the ACL and the PCL. And that's all that they do, right? So they're like your stoppers for forwards and backwards. However, if this truck driver now goes around a bend super fast, those could flop to the side. So we need some straps to go over the top that are going to prevent it from flopping from side to side. And again, that's exactly what we have in our knee. Okay, so we have these ligaments that go and join the two bones together at the sides to prevent them from going side to side. So now we've got our ligaments in there to prevent it going forward and backwards and side to side. So our knee is nice and stable and strong, isn't it? Which is absolutely what we want. However, in this picture, we've not got any padding there. And imagine if we were driving some fragile items and we didn't have it in a box that was padded out. Okay, if we went over a big pothole, the chances are it would bash together, and if there's multiple items in there, it could become damaged and they could easily break. So obviously in this package, we're going to have some nice padding in there to secure it and make sure it doesn't get damaged by the end of it. And that's exactly what we want with our knees, isn't it? We want them to be padded so by the end of the walk, we're not in bits. And what we have is essentially we've got padding on the end of our bones in the form of cartilage. So cartilage is around the end of our bones to prevent this kind of like bone on bone grinding away, yeah? So cartilage is there to kind of protect it as a bit of a cushion. But also within the knee, we've got something called a meniscus, and that's like a big pad, absorption pad in the knee to prevent this real big impact. Okay, so we've got a nice big pad in the knee itself. Yeah, so we've got our straps to stop it from going forwards and backwards, side to side, and we've got our padding to prevent that impact. So that's absolutely fantastic, right? That's really, really good. And that's exactly what we want with the truck. So why is it then, if we've got all these straps and this padding, that things are going wrong? Well, if this truck didn't have very good suspension, okay, so let's just have a look. So suspension obviously is going to be around its wheels, above its wheels, I'm not a mechanic, but I know that there's some form of springs there, isn't there? And this thing's going to have some form of suspension, so that if it goes over a massive pothole or a massive bump, they absorb some of that shock, so that it doesn't just go straight through into our package. And that's exactly what we need in our knees, isn't it? We need some form of shock absorbers. So what we've actually got is our muscles that absorb the shock. So we've got our muscles, right? So we've got our quad muscles, we've got our hamstring muscles. Okay, higher up we've got our glutes, which are going to absorb some of the shock. We've got our calf muscles and the Achilles tendon at the bottom. We've got tibialis, so the muscle at the front. We've got all these muscles that, if they're stronger and strong enough, they'll absorb that shock. Okay, but if we've got weak muscles, weak suspension, then unfortunately the shock is going to be absorbed through the package, through our knees, which we don't want. The other thing is, if we had weak straps, okay, well obviously if these straps are pretty weak, we'd want to make sure that we drive the truck accordingly. If we just literally had these really thin straps and we were like, right, okay, we've strapped it up, but we're not really sure about this, the load's pretty heavy, these straps are pretty weak, we need to be careful when we're going around bends. If we take a bend too fast, it might tear the strap, or it might even completely snap it in half. Yeah, that's not what we want. It's the same with your actual knee, right? These ligaments, the straps, if you don't strength train them and build them up consistently, they might not be strong enough to be able to do the movement that you're looking for. So if you're going up and down hills, especially if you're stepping down and you're carrying a big load on your back, you've got to be really careful, because if you're just pounding down a hill and your muscles aren't super strong and your ligaments aren't super strong, well, they're going to take it, aren't they? They're going to take that impact and they're going to potentially become damaged or torn. Even worse, if you end up going over one way too much, they could even snap. And that's where people end up with like ACL reconstruction and stuff like that. And that's what we want to avoid. Obviously, if you've got sore knees, it's likely that these have just been stretched a bit too much and maybe just been a little bit damaged and inflamed. So what we want to do is just reduce the overall impact by obviously strengthening certain areas. And that's what we're going to go into in a moment. So you would drive the van or the truck, should I say, accordingly, wouldn't you? Right. So you're the driver, you're moving it side to side, you're turning it, you're accelerating and braking accordingly, according to what you've got there. You know, whether you've got strong straps, whether you've got decent suspension. If the suspension was weak, you'd probably have to go a little bit slow over bumps, all that sort of stuff. So what we want to do is make sure that our truck, suspension, everything like that, and our straps all match up, so that we're all good to go, and when we go out on the hill, we can actually move, along the hill without having to worry about getting injuries and our straps breaking or becoming damaged, or too much impact and damaging the goods, essentially the knees. So that's what we're going to talk about now, but I thought it'd be a good idea to give you an overview of the knee so you can understand this in a little bit more detail. So prevention is always better than cure, so that's what we're going to go into first of all. I've not written it down. So first of all, we want to go into prevention, right? So prevention, how can we do this? Well, we've spoken about obviously building muscle, haven't we? Because this is our suspension. Arrow's disappeared, right? So the muscles are our suspension, the ligaments and tendons are our strap. So if we strength train, we are going to build up our muscles and we're going to strengthen our ligaments and our tendons. So by strength training or resistance training, that's going to help with that. So by getting stronger, we are going to be in a much better place. Now, when we're resistance training and when we're out in the hills in general, we need to consider how we actually progress this. So we need to consider progressive overload. We're going to go through both of these points now. Progressive overload. So when we're looking at resistance training, a lot of people would consider resistance training to be going to the gym, lifting weights, maybe doing some squats, all that sort of stuff to build the legs. That is absolutely resistance training. It's basically where you're creating any resistance against the force that you're trying to produce. But also, walking up and down a mountain is also resistance training. So we can build stronger legs by going up and down the mountains. The main thing we need to consider when we're doing this, though, and we will be building stronger legs, obviously, when we're going into the mountains, the main thing we need to consider is that we're progressive with this, so we're progressively overloading it, rather than just completely injuring ourselves. And what I mean by that is, let's just say that we're used to having a walk on a daily basis for, let's just say, 3 kilometers, and it's flat ground, and we don't really do any gym work at all. And then on a weekend, we decide, right, well, we're going to go up and do Yorkshire Three Peaks, and you go and do a massive distance. I can't think of the distance off the top of my head. Let's just say 30k. I think it's probably about that at least. And then we've got a big elevation. If you go from doing 3 kilometers a day on flat ground to doing a 30k day over massive elevation, right, your muscles, your tendons, your ligaments aren't going to be strong enough for that. So that's why you're going to get that knee pain. Whereas if you were progressive with this thing, right, so if you were starting to do strength training, build the strength of your muscles up, build the strength of your ligaments and tendons, so that they're actually in a good position, and then you do a shorter hike and you build up over time, then you're less likely to get those pains in those joints, right? So actually, if you can do some elevation on a Stairmaster, let's just say stepping up on a Stairmaster, that's going to help with those strengthening those quads, those hamstrings, those glutes. If you're doing box step-ups and step-back downs, they're probably even better because you've got the eccentric loading, so you're stepping back down again. Training your body to actually do the thing so that you can progressively increase this, so that when you actually go out for the longer hikes, you're capable of doing them because you've progressively built up to them rather than just diving straight in. And this is the problem with hiking. Obviously, we don't have a endless time through the week to go hiking. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to condense our training and be smart with it, and that's how we implement things like resistance training in a gym, for example, and getting the most out of doing our main lifts, our squatting patterns, our hinges, our lunges, our pushing and pulling, our carries, so that we can actually transfer that over into the mountains, and when we go into the hills, we are prepared. So that's prevention, really, in a nutshell, is preparing yourself to be strong enough and to progressively overload, so you're not absolutely hammering yourself and blasting yourself from the off. And that's what we tend to do, like I say, because we just go, right, I just want to go hiking, go out and do a massive hike, and it's just a little bit too much. So that's prevention. Let's have a look at cure. You have to excuse my handwriting, that is absolutely shocking. I have to do that again, right. So cure, what do we do to cure? Well, let's have a look at this like an iceberg. We've got the main stuff underneath that we really want to do, and then we've got like the tip of the iceberg. And the tip of the iceberg is like your supplementation, right? And without all the stuff down here, the supplementation isn't really going to do a lot. It's not going to be mega impactful, right? If we're taking, let's just say, vitamin D, for example, but our nutrition isn't very good and we're not having enough dietary fats to be able to absorb that vitamin D, then that supplementation is going to be completely useless. So we really need to make sure that all the stuff below the water, below the surface, the bigger part of it, is covered off before we even start considering supplementation. And when we're in a position where we're trying to recover our joints, like I said, there's that inflammation there, fluid there, we want those nutrients to try and recover. So we want to make sure that our nutrition is on point to be able to give our body those nutrients, don't we? So let's start there then. Nutrition. What nutrients do we need? Well, to recover, really, what we want is our proteins and fats, right? Protein and fats. That's a P, not an F, John. Protein and fats. Proteins are basically like the building blocks. They're going to repair muscle tissue and damaged tissue, essentially, so your ligaments and tendons. They're going to really help with recovery, right? Your fats are going to help with your overall immune system and being able to actually absorb certain vitamins. So certain vitamins are fat soluble. They need fats to be able to be absorbed into the body, right? So we need proteins and fats for our recovery. How much protein should we be consuming? Well, normally I would recommend anywhere from sort of 1.5 to 2 grams per kilo of body weight per day. However, if you're injured and you've got inflammation in your joint and you're trying to recover, we want to increase that. So we could increase it to anywhere from like 2.2 even to 2.5 grams. Now, this isn't something that I'd say to have on a daily basis as a norm. Like I say, this is more if you're trying to recover, you've got really, pain, a lot of pain and inflammation in your knees, and you need to get that protein in your body to actually absorb it to recover, and then the rest of it can be used for normal body functions. So your body does require more protein when you're trying to recover. Now, fats, why do we need fats? Well, there's vitamins such as vitamin D, which basically needs fats to be absorbed. Vitamin D is very good for bone health and bone strength. And in the UK, we don't get a lot of vitamin D, which isn't ideal, is it? Because during the winter, there's not a lot of sunlight. Especially if you work in an office, you probably get up when it's dark, drive to the office, you're in a box all day, then you go out when it's dark and you don't actually see the sunlight throughout the entire winter. So vitamin D, funnily enough, is something that I would absolutely recommend to supplement. if you feel you have a deficiency, which most people in the UK probably will do during the winter period. So vitamin D would be a good option for supplementation, right? Is it going to be the magic pill for curing it there and then? No, it's not. It's something that you need to take on a regular basis so that hopefully it helps build up the strength in your bones, and it's more of a prevention as well rather than just a cure. But it's certainly going to help, isn't it? If you've got plenty of vitamin D in your body, it's going to help you to recover as well. So it's prevention and cure, yeah? So we've got proteins and fats. What else do we need? Well, we need to make sure that we're hydrated, right? And this is something that most people don't do on a daily basis. Ensure that we're hydrated. If we've been out on a long day on a hill, we're absolutely going to be dehydrated from all the sweat, probably sweating more than you normally would from going up and down the mountains. If it's cold and wet when you go out, a lot of us tend to not drink as much as we should do. It's just one of those things. When our body's cold and wet, we just don't think about drinking, whereas when we're in the summer, we're down in the water, aren't we? But hydration is super, super important because it's going to provide that transportation of those nutrients. If you're dehydrated, it's not going to help with that transport of nutrients through your blood. When you're hydrated, it's going to help with those shuttling nutrients to those areas. Hydration isn't just water though, right? So we've got things like, if it works, we've got things like sodium, we've got potassium, we've got magnesium, right? All these things we want to be consuming as well. And yes, of course, to help with this, if we feel we're super dehydrated, hydration tablets are going to be a great thing to have. I mean, I have them quite regularly anyway. Hydration tabs. Making sure that you've got plenty of sodium, potassium, magnesium, all that sort of stuff in your body so that you can actually hydrate. The reason why we need things like sodium in our body is so that the signals can be sent for our nervous system very effectively. If we don't have enough salt in there, signals don't get sent very well. Right? So we need these things, okay, in our body. So we need to make sure we're hydrated. But obviously, just having one hydration drink with a tablet in isn't going to do it. We need to make sure we're hydrated all the time. But that's just a supplementation to help out. Right? What else do we need? Sleep. Right? Sleep is a massive one. When you look at any podcasts of professional athletes and they talk about the best recovery protocols, they just say a good mattress, right? Having a decent mattress where you can actually get some good head down. Getting at least 8 hours, 8 to 9 hours sleep at night, maybe even more if you're trying to recover, right? Ensuring that you get plenty of sleep. How can we help with sleep? Well, things like magnesium. If we're supplementing magnesium, that does really help with sleep as well. So yeah, but sleep is super important. And obviously just having magnesium isn't going to help, if you're not actually getting the sleep. And that's why I said that it's the tip of the iceberg is the supplementation. Don't know what's gone on there, sorry about that. Whole thing's moving. Right, so proteins, fats, hydration, sleep. Now, there's going to be things as well that we can do to help with reduction of things like the inflammation if we feel we need to. So if your joint is really inflamed, I'll tell you what, I'll go back to this first of all. So one of the other things is movement. And this is going to come into the reduction of inflammation in a moment. But movement is going to help with blood circulation so that we get the nutrients to those damaged areas. Ligaments and tendons don't get a lot of blood flow as it is. So if you're sat with your leg up, it's going to probably take a little bit longer to recover than if you were doing some form of movement and helping the nutrients and everything blood flow. So it reduces all the toxins in there and everything gets out. So by doing some form of movement, obviously if you've got sore knees and sore joints in general, doing low to no impact movement is going to be best. So swimming or steady cycling or steady walking, just not up and down hills and with no weight on, right? And just getting that movement in is going to be super important. But if you've got a ton of inflammation and it's super hard to move your joints, then obviously some form of anti-inflammatory is going to help. Now, anti-inflammation, we could use something that's natural, so cold therapy. Depending on when you do this will depend on how effective it is really and the situation, but by applying some cold treatment, so using an ice bath regularly, applying some direct cold compression to that area could help reduce the inflammation just enough to get you moving again to help with, like I say, that circulation of blood. Also, you could use some anti-inflammatory if you wanted to in terms of anti-inflammatory medication, across the counter, all that sort of stuff could help in this scenario. But just be mindful that obviously your body is becoming inflamed for a certain reason, and that reason is to try and protect it and to help with recovery. And if you go and slam yourself a load of medication in there to reduce that inflammation and start really pushing yourself because you can't feel the pain, or the pain is reduced, you could end up overdoing it and injuring it even more. So if you are using anti-inflammatories, obviously just be sensible with it. and make sure that you're actually doing the things that are going to help you to recover and not cause more damage, if that makes sense. So rather than just taking pain relief and anti-inflammatories and cracking on, making things worse, take them just so you can actually move and use low impact and no impact, essentially. So going back to supplementation then, so we've got like the main stuff down there. Now with supplementation, like I say, you've got vitamin D, you've got hydration tablets. Obviously we've spoken about protein, so things like protein powder and especially collagen. I'm not sure how to spell this to be fair. Collagen, I think that's how you spell it. But collagen especially is really good for bone health. You know, it's essentially like a peptide that helps with bone health and structure. So collagen's really good. But just having any easily digestible protein is going to be very helpful as well, especially after you've done a walk. So getting in some whey protein just to help with that recovery straight away. And then having some sort of casein protein on an evening just to help with that consistent digestion of protein so that you can at least have it absorbing there for recovery throughout the evening as well. So I'll pop that in there. So whey protein is your quick releasing protein, quick digesting, and then you've got your casein, which is your slow. So those two elements are going to be really, really useful for recovery as well. So yeah, whey and casein. Other supplementation, we've spoken about fats as well and how they help with your overall immune system and immune health. We've got things like omega-3. Obviously this stuff you're going to get through your diet if you're consuming the right foods. You know, if you're consuming decent fish, then you're going to get your proteins and fats in there, you're going to get your omega-3, and that's going to help with your joint health overall. However, supplementation of omega-3 is going to be useful, isn't it? It's going to be helpful, especially if you're not consuming plenty of fish. So omega-3 is good. So that's my kind of list, I'd say, of supplementation for helping with the cure aspect and essentially, you know, prevention as well with consuming things like vitamin D to ensure that you're not deficient in vitamin D. So as a recap then, we've spoken about and looked at inflammation in the joint, we've looked at the structure of the knee itself, and we've used the analogy of the truck to understand the movement and how we could essentially strengthen certain areas to prevent our fragile goods from getting damaged. Yeah, our knees, we've only got one set of knees, haven't we? And you know, once you've damaged this, essentially once you've damaged the cartilage and the meniscus, yes, you can always have operations to repair them, but they're never going to be the same. So by making sure that we implement these things, resistance training progressively, you know, strengthening those muscles, strengthening those tendons and ligaments, that's going to help with the prevention aspect. So being strong and not going over the top. And then obviously we've covered the cure aspect. So looking at the tip of the iceberg in terms of supplementation, but also what really goes into recovery as well in terms of just all the basics, you know, sleep, you know, rest, recovery, hydration, nutrition, all the basics. Hopefully that's been of some help for any of you guys who are struggling with your knees and struggling with essentially inflammation in the knees or pain in the knees after long hikes. So what you need to do is, if you're getting that, make sure you're strength training, make sure that you're going, you know, doing things gradually. You're not just chucking a big load on and going out for a 30k when you haven't done any walking for a while. Or even if you have done loads of walking, make sure you don't just extend it too much and cause yourself too much pain. But that is pretty much everything there. So if you've got any questions or if you've got anything to add, you know, bang it in the comments. Really interested to hear, you know, what other people think and, you know, to learn from anyone else and to get more information. So yeah, get in the comments and fire in, you know, your opinions and thoughts on that as well. But thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.